And we're mainly taking this study out of the book of Proverbs with some reinforcement in some other areas. All right, so we'll get those handed out. We'll get into it straight away. We don't really have much spare time today. I've got a lot I got to cover. So we'll go to the book of Proverbs as well. And just picking up on the study of the simple, the fool, or the wise. Now, next week will be Brother Bax is going to be with us, so he'll be teaching the Sunday school hour. And then for the following 2 Sundays, I will be away, so the men will be covering that for us. And so I don't think we're going to make it to get through this, but I'm going to do my best. And if we don't make it, then we'll just have to pick it up in a few weeks' time. All right, so it's good to see everybody this morning. Glad you're here. We still got several people out sick with different things, and it's that time of year. I get to where I hate this time of year because it decimates the numbers every time. If you look at the attendance, it always drops during this season. We looked already now at the person who's called simple. We're now talking about this person who's called the fool. I already covered on page number 5 who can be a fool, the results of being a fool. Now we're looking at the characteristics of one who's called a fool or a foolish person. So we'll look at these characteristics this morning, if you want to fill those in. All right, characteristics of a foolish person. In Proverbs chapter 1 and verse number 7, if you're able to keep up with these references, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." So that's your first blank, despise. They despise wisdom and they despise instruction. That's a characteristic of a fool. Now I would say this, that likely you're not going to find too many people who you're going to say they peg every one of the characteristics, but you might find people who get several of the characteristics. And one of those is that they despise wisdom, they hate the wisdom of God, and they also hate for somebody to teach them, which is what instruction is, to tell them what's right. And I do know people like that. They cannot stand to be told what's right. They are going to do it their way no matter what. And that's an indication that person's a fool. All right, then at the top of page number 6. It says in verse number 22 of Proverbs chapter number 1, "How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity, and the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge?" So, that's your blank. A fool hates good knowledge. That's a characteristic. They hate good knowledge. Now, they love the knowledge of the wicked, but they cannot stand the knowledge of what's holy and right. All right, Proverbs chapter number 10. You know what I should do is maybe I should farm a few of these out. Now we'll keep going the way we are. Proverbs chapter number 10. You know, I listened to myself the other day and I realized just how bad my American accent is. And it's amazing to me because I had lost it a lot up in Queensland. I don't know why it's back so strong here. But I was listening to it and I thought, man, it's grating at times. It just, Mrs. Dunley, I thought, who is that? And it was me. So I apologize. I don't know what happened. I had really lost it. But it's back in force. Proverbs chapter number 10 and verse number 18. "He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander, is a fool." So I wrote here this. The characteristic of someone who is a fool is he's hypocritical. He's hypocritical and slanderous. So that's blank number 3. Hypocritical and slanderous. He hides hatred with lying lips. So he's a liar, he's a hypocrite. In other words, he tells you that he likes you, he doesn't. He tells you that he's for you and he's not. He tells you that he's supportive of the cause of Christ and he's not. So he's not what he says he is, he's a hypocrite. Pretends to be something. And he's slanderous, he utters a slander. And then the same chapter, verse number 23, as we just work through this Bible study, or this study of Proverbs, "It is a sport, it is as sport to a fool to do mischief, but a man of understanding hath wisdom." And so number 4 there is that a fool finds entertainment in mischief. Now, we use that word differently now than what they used it in the Bible. We say, oh, that's a little mischievous person, or I'm full of mischief, or whatever. In the Bible, that was incredible wickedness. That was extreme wickedness. And so he says there that it is as sport to a fool to do mischief. When they get involved in things that are wicked and wrong, to them it's a game. To them it's just entertainment. Now, again, you probably know people like that when they do the wrong thing, they think that this is fun. But God said, no, this is a sign of a fool, but a man of understanding hath wisdom, and he knows that it's not always fun to be a fool, right? You ever meet somebody who should be wearing the little green hat with all the little dingle bells and sitting in, they should be playing and acting in the king's courtyard trying to make him laugh? There's a reason why they call him a fool. Because for him, all that matters is making someone laugh. That's why he's called a fool. He's involved in folly. Boy, I'll tell you what, I was a fool when I was a kid. All I cared about was getting a laugh. When I was in school, I caused my teachers so much heartache. All I cared about was just they would laugh at me. It's true. It's hard to believe that about me, isn't it? There I go. There I go, see? But I didn't care if you laughed at me on that one. This thing of always looking for laughter, you know what Ecclesiastes says about that? He says that there's not nearly as much wisdom and there's not as much to learn from someone who's always laughing. There's always something to learn from someone who has tears. You find more wisdom when you're crying than you do when you're laughing. You grow when you're in heartache. You don't grow when you're in being jolly. You just don't grow. That's what Ecclesiastes says. Proverbs chapter 12, I would think it was right. I hope it's right. Proverbs chapter 12 and verse number 15. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise. So number 5 is that a fool by character, he believes whatever he does is right. Whatever he does, it's right, and he will not seek counsel. If he did it, it must be right. If she did it, it must be right. And then Proverbs chapter number 12 and verse number 16. A fool's wrath is presently known, but a prudent man covereth shame. So number 6 is he's quick-tempered. That's a foolish thing to be quick-tempered. It's presently known. There's no tempering time. There's no delay. As soon as something makes them angry, they're immediately blowing up. So they're very quick-tempered. It says a similar thing in chapter 14 and verse number 17. He that is soon angry dealeth foolishly. All right, so this quick... No, that's right. So he's quick-tempered, and because he's quick-tempered, everything that he does is folly. It's foolish. All right. Chapter 13 and verse number 19. The desire accomplished is sweet to the soul, but it is abomination to fools to depart from evil. And so number 7 is he loves evil. He loves what's evil. Now please don't think of evil as just something that's... would you agree murder is evil? Okay. That's not just what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the extreme sense of evil. Is it wrong to tell a lie? Is it evil? Yes, it is. That's what I'm getting at. Is it wrong? By the way, a lie doesn't have to be just fabricating something completely out of thin air. When we withhold information that should be known to give clarity, that's lying. When we withhold information that should be known, that's lying. You're deceiving someone. And that's what a liar is. It's a deceiver. Okay? Whew. Man, how many times have we done that? I want to say that that's evil. And when a person loves evil, they're a fool. Then back to chapter 12 and verse number 23. He says, a prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaimeth foolishness. All right, look at chapter 15 and verse number 2. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. Starting to get the picture what it is. Mouth is a problem. Chapter 18, some of my favorite verses in the Bible. Verse number 6, I love this, my life verse. A fool's lips enter into contention, and his mouth calleth for strokes. Everybody okay? His mouth calleth for strokes. He says a fool needs to be punched in the mouth. Verse number 7. A fool's mouth is his destruction, and his lips are the snare of his soul. So number 8. He has little or no control over his mouth, or they have little or no control over their mouth. And then chapter 14 and verse number 23. Verse number 3. Chapter 14, verse 3, in the mouth of the foolish is a rod of pride, but the lips of the wise shall preserve them. And so another characteristic is that he speaks pridefully. He speaks pridefully. Verse number 9, fools make a mock at sin, but among the righteous there is favor. So number 10, he mocks sin. He or she mocks sin, a fool. This is characteristics of a fool. They mock sin. They think lightly of it. They think it's funny. So they do things that are wrong, wicked, evil, whatever. They're committing a sin of some sort, and they make a joke out of it. It's no big deal. That's a fool that's doing that. Now, whether they're fully a fool or whether they're acting foolish, I guess that's each person has to determine that themselves. But they are acting a fool. They're being a fool when they mock sin. I guess what we have to remember is just what sin cost our Savior and our Lord. We can't look at it and think it's just a light deal, no matter how big we might think it is or how little it is. Look, when I first started in the ministry, I was preaching in a jail. And this particular jail was the holding jail between when they had been convicted of a crime and when they were going to prison. And so a lot of the guys in there had already been convicted of murder and rape and different things, and they were headed to prison. There's a couple of guys. There's one fella in particular. I don't know why, but his mother named him Judas. And Judas was a guy that we preached to many, many weeks. He was very friendly. In fact, he went through an extensive Bible study that we were conducting through the prisons, through what's called Rock of Ages prison ministry. And he just had such a great spirit about him. I really liked this guy. I made the mistake of asking, why are you here? And I learned because of that. I just didn't ask anymore. I didn't want to know. But he had killed somebody. And he just in a rage had murdered somebody. And he was going to jail, to prison for a long time. Whether he is ever going to get out, I don't know. But he wasn't one that was given to make fun of what he'd done. He'd weep about it. He's a great big guy. And he'd weep about it, and he regretted that he'd done it. But you know, in that same place, there would be other men who would joke about the fact that they had murdered somebody or that they had done whatever crime that they had done. And we look at that and we think, how can they mock something so heinous? But in the eyes of God, He's not viewing it that way. Now, I think that there are different types of sin in the Bible, and some God calls an abomination and some He doesn't. So I think God does have a bit of a ranking system of sin. But when we're talking about sin, it's not as if one's a big sin, one's a little sin, and so God, He's okay with this little one, but He's not okay with the big one. Every one of them cost the life of his son. And that's the way we need to look at it. We need to understand how heinous it is before God. It put him on the cross. A fool makes a mock of sin. He thinks it's funny. And it's no more repulsive, it's no more unsavory for us to hear somebody mock the fact that they've murdered somebody than it is for us to make fun of the little sin in our life. And that's how we need to look at it. Sometime it'll do you good just from the depths of your heart to ask the Lord to help you to see sin the way He sees it. And if we did, I think it would probably make us sick. I mean, physically sick, if we could see it the way He sees it. So please don't be a person who makes fun of sinfulness in your life, because it's not funny to God. Okay? It's a foolish thing to make light of it. Proverbs chapter 14 and verse number 16. A wise man feareth and departeth from evil, but the fool rageth and is confident. So number 11, he finds confidence raging in evil. And that whole idea there is just to be completely given over to it. He's dedicated himself. He's pursuing it with power. Okay, this is the idea behind raging. He finds confidence in raging in evil. And then chapter 15 verse number 5, a fool despiseth his father's instruction, but he that regardeth reproof is prudent. And so according to chapter 15, number 12, a fool rejects parental instruction. He rejects parental instruction. No wonder he's called a fool. He rejects parental instruction. Okay? And then chapter 16 and verse number 22. So like I said, all I've done for you is I have put on paper a study of the simple, the fool, and the wise. That's all I've done out of the book of Proverbs, okay? So could anyone do this? No question about it. I'm just trying to make it concise for you here. Chapter 16, verse number 22. Understanding is a wellspring of life unto him that hath it, but the instruction of fools is folly. So number 13, he teaches foolishness when he's giving instruction. Teaches foolishness when giving instruction. So when he is trying to give someone a precept, it's folly, it's foolish. When she's trying to teach someone, it's foolishness. And then chapter 17, verse number 10. Do you notice how long the list is out of the book of Proverbs here of these characteristics? Chapter 17, verse 10. A reproof entereth more into a wise man than 100 stripes into a fool. Number 14, a fool cannot be told he is wrong. A fool cannot be told he is wrong. Now, it's not that you can't go tell them, they can't receive it. Chapter 17, verse number 21 says, He that begetteth a fool doeth it to his sorrow, and the father of a fool hath no joy. Look at verse 25. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her that bare him. So, in number 15, the fool brings sorrow to parents. A fool brings sorrow to parents, where a wise son brings joy and blessing to the parents. Chapter 18, verse number 2, a fool hath no delight in understanding, but that his heart may discover itself. So he always tries to discover more of himself. He's into himself. And your blank there is himself. When someone is into themselves, that's what they think about. That's what they're learn more about me. God said that is a sign of a fool. Which is interesting because that's very much what modern day advertising is all about. It's about you. And a lot of the New Age religions are also about you finding out more about yourself, discovering more of you, discovering your heart, more and more and more. Now, is that not true? Is that not true, what we're being told today? Kids are being instructed that way in schools, to learn more about themselves, discover more of themselves. God said that's a fool. His heart simply is into himself. And then number 17 in chapter 20, verse 1, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Whew. So a fool is one who is deceived by alcohol. A fool is one who is deceived by alcohol. It's a mocker, and it's raging. All right, top of the next page, number 7. And page number 7 is what I mean to say. And then the point number is 18, Proverbs 20, verse number 3. It is an honor for a man to cease from strife, but every fool will be meddling. So he brings about strife. A fool brings about strife. That's what it means about meddling. He's so involved. He's always constantly stirring things up. And so he's just constantly, strife follows him everywhere he goes because he's a meddler. He brings about strife. Chapter 21, verse number 20. The Bible says, whoso curseth his father or his mother, his lamp shall be put out in obscure darkness. So number 19, he will not control his finances. Did I read the wrong one? I sure did. You know what's funny is that I can read that and actually think I'm reading the right one. Man, please forgive me. Chapter 21, verse 20. There is treasure to be desired and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man spendeth it up. All right, chapter 21, verse 20 tells us he will not control his finances. He's wasteful. If you look at verse 20, there's treasure to be desired and oil in the dwelling of the wise. A wise man's resourceful and sees the value of what he has, but the fool, his money burns a hole in his pocket. And he doesn't see the value of what he has. So I would even say that goes into the realm of just wasteful with what they have, abusive with what they have, not caring for what they have. You know what I mean? Doesn't care, just spend it up, burn it up, break it up, whatever. That's the heart of a fool. But a wise person says, what I have is valuable to me. Doesn't matter whether it's valuable to everyone else, by the way. But it's valuable to me and I care for it. Right? I've told you before, you couldn't offer me enough money for my 89 Tarago because it's worth a whole lot more to me than what I could possibly sell it for. You know? Isn't that true? How many of you had a car like that? Yeah. You couldn't replace it. You know its nuances. You know the troubles that it has. You know that on a cold morning you have to go out and push start it. But you're okay with that, right? You know that I lent my car to Brother Warren last year to pick some people up, my Tarago. And when he got in, I said, there's really not much to know about it. It's just a car, you know, just pretty well drive it. Everything's fine. And my wife said, are you crazy? And I'm so used to everything that I just figured that, you know, that's just the way it is. So when you turn it on, when you crank it on, the check engine light comes on, the parking brake light comes on, but the parking brake's not on. Often the brake light comes on, but everything's okay. The brakes are fine and the fluid's full. Sometimes there's these strange noises that come from the motor that's sitting right next to you. You feel like maybe you're going to blow up, you know. And so there are things about it that I needed to let him know. The fuel gauge does not work. The speedo sometimes works, but it's okay because your biorhythms, when you're driving, you pretty well can gauge where you're at, you know. The cops don't accept the biorhythm argument very much, and I said, well, okay, pretty much everything that's supposed to work doesn't, and everything that doesn't work is. Or shouldn't work is. If it's supposed to be off, it's on. And if it's supposed to be on, it's off. So just drive it backward. You know? But I love that thing. And what I'm saying is, I told you all of that to say that it's valuable to me. And I don't abuse it. I take care of it. I treat it like it's a nice car as much as I can. Because I don't want to just throw the thing away. To me, it's not a throwaway car. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm using my personal illustration here to help you to see something. Just because someone else may look at it and say it's cheap and junk and worthless, doesn't mean anything. Take care of what you got. Because a fool doesn't see the value of what God's given him in his hand. But a wise man sees that there's a treasure there, and he needs to hang on to it. Okay? Proverbs chapter 23 and verse number 9. Speak not in the ears of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of thy words. A fool rejects wise counsel. In number 20, he just rejects wise counsel. Chapter 26. This one's not so nice. As a dog returneth to his vomit, so a fool returneth to his folly. And that's number 21. A fool always returns to his sin. Now, when somebody truly repents of their sin, they go away from it. And they're finished. But a fool keeps coming back to it and make an excuse for why they're there. Chapter 28, the last thing that I found in Proverbs in verse number 26 that's a characteristic of a fool is he that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered. Number 22, he trusts in the leading of his own heart. He trusts in the leading of his own heart, which is really akin to the one that we saw before, that he believes everything that he does is right, that he can't make a mistake, so he can't be corrected. You see how it all ties together? I mean, you start off because you've got pride, which is a sign of a fool. So you got pride, and so you won't receive instruction from anyone else, your parents or anyone else. And then you go on and everything you think you do is right. And so when somebody tries to reprove you, you reject it and you won't receive instruction. And you end up in sin, but you think that's okay because you make fun of sin. And then you get to where you actually love the sin. I mean, it's just this thing, just keeps churning and churning in the life of a fool. And somebody who ends up being a full-blown fool in the Bible has a real difficult time getting out of it. People who don't get saved, many times, they are completely caught up in their folly. And it's just this churning, turning quagmire that they just can't get out of. And it all starts with one fact: they will not fear God. And because they won't fear God, they cannot even begin down the path of wisdom. Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So what I'm saying is that a fool who becomes a full-blown fool is very difficult to rescue. It's very difficult to lead them to the Lord. It's very difficult to help them to see that. And can a Christian be a fool? Yes. We looked at that last week. One of the first things, can a Christian be a fool? Yes. They're saved, but they don't fear God, and they continue on in folly upon folly upon folly upon folly. All right, so we need to guard our hearts. That's where it all begins. Warnings about fools. Warnings about fools. I'm going to farm these out. Nathan, would you take Proverbs 14:7? Jerry, would you take Proverbs 26:4? Rudy, do you mind reading out loud? Is that all right? Proverbs 26:5. Ross, 26:1. And Ben, can you take 29:9? Okay. Some warnings about fools. Yeah, it's not very hard, is it? I need to make them more cryptic. Too easy for them. All right, so the warnings about fools. Proverbs 14, verse number 7.
Go from the presence of a foolish man when
So stay away from them. Stay away from them. Proverbs 26:4. So number 2 is, do not respond to their foolishness with foolishness. Answer not a fool according to his folly. In the same way. Don't answer him that way. That's why the next verse becomes the verse of wisdom, and all it does is just change just very slightly. Proverbs 26, verse 5. So number 3 is, do not let foolishness be unanswered by wisdom. Or go unanswered. That's probably a better way to phrase it. Don't let foolishness go unanswered by wisdom. Wisdom needs to respond to it. So we don't answer a fool with more foolishness, but we do answer them with wisdom, which may sometimes be no answer at all. Sometimes a person that's a fool, you're better to keep your mouth shut, which, by the way, Proverbs chapter 9 deals heavily with that there's no sense in correcting a fool because you just get a blot, a scorner. You get a blot to yourself when you do that. All right, and then number 4, Proverbs 26:1. The word seemly means appropriate. It's not right or fitting. Number 4, do not honor a fool. Don't honor a fool. Because it's not fitting. And then Proverbs 29, verse 9.
If a wise man contendeth with a foolish man, whether he rage or laugh, there is no rest.
All right, that is not don. That's do. Do not contend with them. Do not contend with them. Don't fight with them. Don't labor over them. Just walk away from them. And I like what he says. That's a wonderful verse, by the way. That's a great one to keep in mind. Memorize that thing. Whether you rage or laugh, there's no rest. You can laugh at him and you still don't come out the best. You can rage at him and you don't come out the best. So just stay away from him. Don't contend with them at all. All right? Now, we start the section on the wise. Let me see here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there's no way. No way we're going to get through it today. The wise. Why? Why do we need wisdom? Maybe the basic answer is just, well, because we need to live wise and that pleases God. But let's see what Proverbs has to say about this subject. Wisdom sees things from God's perspective, is your first blank. We need wisdom because it sees things from God's perspective. In other words, it takes a situation, instead of just applying our natural wisdom to it, because the wisdom of God comes from above, we're able to look at it and say there might be something different than what I'm seeing on the surface. Jesus Christ told people, he said, don't judge according to the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. And that's dealing with wisdom. That things aren't always as they appear to us on the surface. And so we need to be wise enough to step back and look for God's wisdom on it. And what does He see? Remember when the disciples said, hey, there's some people that are preaching and they're not with us. Do you want us to go rebuke them? Do you want us to tell them to stop? And He said, no, you leave them alone. Just because they're not walking with us doesn't mean they're against us. If they're not against us, they're for us. Leave them alone. And that was the wisdom of God there. And so we need to step back and see things from a different perspective. Let me give you another one. Peter, James, and John. It was James and John. They're all passing through Samaria. Remember the city in Samaria? Samaria said they didn't want Jesus there. They turned Him away because His face was as though He would go to Jerusalem. What that meant was He's passing through Samaria, which was unheard of, but He's facing Jerusalem. They know where He's going. So they know that He's a Jew going to Jerusalem, passing through their country, and the Samaritans said, get out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. And so James and John said, Lord, do you want us to call down fire to consume them, to burn them up like Elijah did? And He said to him, ye know not what manner of spirit ye are of. That was the wisdom of God. He said, I didn't come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. I'm not here to burn people up because they reject me. That's up to them, but I'm not going to then burn them as a result of it. They lost perspective. Jesus said, you're of a wrong spirit, not them. Isn't that right? Isn't that what he said? You are the one that you don't know which spirit's controlling you. You better just leave them alone. Focus on yourself. Again, Matthew chapter number 7. We're to judge without hypocrisy. Judge not, lest ye be judged. For with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged also yourself. So if you judge in hypocrisy, you're going to receive hypocritical judgment. But if you judge in righteousness and wisdom and charity, that's the judgment you'll receive in return, you see? You have to have God's wisdom to be able to see things that way, because we don't in our natural man look at things like that. We're always back to front. So that's number one. We need wisdom because wisdom sees things from God's perspective. I don't know what's going on in everyone's life. I know a lot of what's going on in a lot of people's lives because you talk to me about it. But what I want to say is this. Whatever's happening, whatever the situation is, try to step back and say, God, show me your view of this. Show me what you see about this. Because it may not be what you think at all. Right? Can I say one more thing here? The Bible talks about charity in 1 Corinthians chapter number 13. And it says one thing about charity that always causes me, I feel reproved every time. Charity thinketh no evil. Now, it's not just that charity doesn't meditate or think about evil things, but that when something happens, it doesn't think evil about the situation. Somebody said something to me and it didn't quite sound just quite right, so I immediately think that person's out to get me or they're against me. But God says that's not charity. Charity doesn't think evil. It gives the benefit of the doubt to people. Somebody did such and such, and man, from my view, I mean, that looks like they're really trying to get me. They're trying to hurt me. Well, maybe we need to step back and say, God, I might have a wrong perspective on this, and I need to have some charity. It might not be that way at all. Can anybody else put their hands up with me and say, I have responded about something or responded to something that I was sure I had it right, and I was going to make sure I got back at them, I got even with them, I got it straightened out, I got in their face, only to find out I was exactly wrong. Anyone else? And don't you feel like an idiot? Don't you feel that way when you respond that way? And they say, I didn't mean that at all. I don't even know what you're talking about. My wife and I were reading these silly text messages. I don't even know how we got there, but these silly text messages that people write to each other because of autocorrect on the phone. And one of them in particular was just absolutely hilarious. The girlfriend of this man wrote and said, "Do I look like a cow?" And he typed back, but what came through was moo. He tried again and it came moo. He tried again, moo, moo, moo. And finally took the autocorrect off and kept saying, I'm trying to say no, 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 no. You do not look like a cow. But by that time, she has already said, well, as long as we're being honest with each other, and she tells him off. Whew, autocorrect. That's what happens when we think evil. We need to get God's perspective on it, right? Because there are some things said sometimes that's not what they meant at all. There are things done, that's not what they meant at all. Autocorrect is switched off of my phone because, man, I know where that goes. All right, number 2. Without wisdom, we are ineffective for God. Ineffective for God. Because there's nothing that we can actually do that accomplishes something without the wisdom of God. Number 3, a lack of wisdom causes many trials in the lives of people, whether they're saved or unsaved. Why do we need it? Because many trials come when we haven't followed wisdom, the wisdom of God in our life. Would you agree with that? How many of us are paying, even right now, we're paying for something that is a result of not following the wisdom of God? Man, Any one of us could put our hand up. All right, number 4. Why should we get it? Because we're commanded to get wisdom. We are commanded to get it. Get wisdom in Proverbs 4. Get understanding. All right. Wow, 23 of these things. Okay, we basically have just a few minutes here, so I'm going to farm these out again, okay? So I'll start up here with Jerry this time. Proverbs 2:9, Nathan 2:12, Taru, would you do 3:13, and Rudy 3:35, Ross 3:16. You might as well take 17 as well, 16 and 17. Dan 3:22. Dan, take 22, 23. 24. You happy to do that? 23, 22, 23, 24. Ben, 4:6. Stephen, 4:8. Rod, would you take... Stephen, can you do 8 and 9? Rod, can you take 5:2? Let's get that far, if we're able. Okay. Are you ready? Here we go. The results of wisdom. Proverbs chapter 2, verse number 9. The result, number 1, is understanding. When we get wisdom, we get understanding. When you incline to wisdom, you gain understanding through that. Chapter 2, verse 12.
To deliver thee from the way of the evil man, from the man that speaketh froward things.
Number 2, the results of wisdom, deliverance from evil people. The froward man is a twisted, perverted man, okay? That's what that is. Deliverance from evil people. Number 3, chapter 3, verse 13.
Happy is the man that findeth wisdom, and the man that getteth understanding.
So number 3 is happiness. Happiness. There's another one from my friend that said there's no such thing as happiness in the Bible. Happiness. All right, chapter 3, verse 35, number 4.
The wise shall inherit glory, but shame shall be the promotion of fools.
He inherits glory. You get wisdom, you get glory. Wow. Okay, number 5, verse 16.
Length of days is in her right hand, and in her left hand riches and honor.
Okay, so number 5, and that's speaking about wisdom. It says her, but if you back up, it's speaking about wisdom. Long life. The results of wisdom is long life and riches. Now again, that doesn't mean that you're going to be a wealthy individual in the world sense, but you have riches. Okay? Riches could be in the sense of just having the value placed upon what God's given you. Right? Oh, there's so much I want to say there, but I'm going to move on. Verse number 17.
Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace.
So you get pleasantness and peace. All right, number 7, verse 22. So you get life and grace. This is when you get wisdom and instruction and knowledge and understanding. Life and grace. Number 8. Safety and stability in life. Safety and stability in life. And verse 24.
When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt lie down, and sleep.
Peaceful sleep, unhindered by fear. Man. Do you guys ever have something just consuming you and you can't sleep? That's a lack of wisdom. Because when we have wisdom about a situation, we're able to cast it upon the Lord and not worry, and then we don't lose sleep. Because He said you'll have peaceful sleep, right? Isn't that what He said? Yeah. Man. So nobody's accusing anybody. All of us have laid awake at night, worrying about something. Where God says, why? Why are you worrying? I want to give you sleep. That's what the Bible says. He giveth His beloved sleep. Okay? Chapter 4, verse number 6, number 10.
Forsake her not, and she shall preserve thee. Love her, and she shall keep thee.
Preservation. When we have wisdom, we have preservation. All right, chapter 4, verse number 8.
Exalt her, and she shall promote thee. She shall bring thee to honor, when thou dost embrace her.
Promotion in honor. Promotion in honor. Just to be compared with it, you can be promoted in dishonor. Promotion and honor. And then verse number 9.
She shall give to thine head an ornament of grace, a crown of glory shall she deliver to thee.
A crown of glory. And chapter 5, verse 2.
Thou must regard discretion, and that thy lips may keep knowledge.
Discretion. Discretion. Now, we're reading single verses out of long passages. And if you want to say, well, where does wisdom fit in there? Then you got to read the whole passage. But obviously, to save time, we've just narrowed it down to the specifics here. Chapter 7 and verse number 4. Say unto wisdom, thou art my sister, and call understanding thy kinswoman. I think, yes. After that one, I forgot to put this in the notes. So after, on number 14, where it says Proverbs 7:4, just put and following. And if you want to abbreviate that, that's abbreviated FF. That's the abbreviation of that. For those following, okay? FF. Verses following. Because number 14 is protection from a strange woman or from strange women. Not an odd woman. All right, that's not protection from one that's just a little off center, all right? It's protection from the woman, the stranger, who's not your wife. That's what that's referring to. Someone who's not your wife, alluring you in. Well, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We might be able to just nail a few of these and get it. I'd really like to get to a stopping point, actually. It'd be good. So let's go chapter number 8, verse number 18. If you would, Jerry, 8:18. Nathan, 8:35. Taru, 10:1. Rudy, 12:8. Ross, 14:5. Dan, 24:3. Ben, 24:14. And Stephen, 28:26. Yeah. And Rod, if you would, 29:8. 29:8. Okay. Let's get through these. Okay, so number 15, Proverbs 8:18. Durable, yes. Okay, so durable riches. Durable riches and honor. It is. Durable riches and honor. Okay, 835.
For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord.
Life and favor from the Lord. I would guess any of us would want favor from the Lord. Chapter 10, verse 1. Okay, a glad father. A glad father. Chapter 12, verse 8.
A man shall be commended according to his wisdom, but he that is of a perverse heart shall be despised.
Commendation. 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 All right, chapter 14, verse 5.
Faithful witness will not lie, but false witness will utter lies.
We on the right one, or did I write the wrong verse down? Yeah. Well, let's see. Favor of leaders. The favor of leaders. What did I do to myself here? Well, let me give you the blank, and I'll have to go back and find that one. Sorry. The favor of leaders. The favor of leaders. Boy, that's... You're trying to find a needle in the haystack sometimes with those. But you get the favor of leaders. I'll come back to you with that one. Chapter 24, verse number 3. The building of a house. The building of a house, obviously not the physical structure, but referring to your family. So one of the results of wisdom in our life is that we get a house builded by the Lord, a family, something enduring that way, all right? And it keeps going in that chapter, incidentally, on that subject, so you can keep reading that. Chapter 24, verse 14.
So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto thy soul. When thou hast found it, then there shall be a reward, and thy expectation shall not fail.
Okay, a reward and fulfilled expectation. A reward and fulfilled expectation. This is again the result of having wisdom. A reward and a fulfilled expectation. Now your expectations will be in line with what God wants, with God's desires. God places the desires in our hearts. Sometimes we can venture out, and God even gives us the liberty to have our own desires, which He will sometimes fulfill as well. But He will not cut short your expectations. Proverbs 28:26.
He that trusteth in his own heart is a fool, but whoso walketh wisely, he shall be delivered.
Deliverance. Wisdom gives us deliverance. And it could be deliverance from what? From anything in your life. So the fool is the one who's just walking on, carrying on, step by step, has really no idea what's coming, maybe gets entrapped in a snare and folly in one way or the other. But the wise person is delivered from that. And sometimes, guys, I think that when we're walking in the wisdom of God, that we are delivered from things that we're not even aware of and probably won't be aware of until we get to heaven and God says, you know, I saved you from this, and I saved you from this and this, because you were walking wisely. Last one, 29:8. This one I love. The ability to turn away wrath. The results of wisdom is the ability to turn away wrath. And I love that. Well, for a number of reasons, but man, you know, I know politics is corrupt. I understand that, but I keep coming back to this. There's no reason why we have to just leave it at that. We can act wisely and behave ourselves wisely and turn away the wrath of God from our cities and from our communities if we'll behave ourselves wisely. I don't think we have to just throw our hands up and say, well, that's the end of it. We're done. Okay. But guys, that's the end of today, and we are done. Father, please bless this time now and help us to be prepared for the meeting to come. Thank you for your blessings on the day and for the patience of the people as we just methodically step through a study like this. We pray that you would now honor the time coming, honor the reading of your word and the preaching and the singing. In Jesus' name, amen.